You know, there's something extraordinarily powerful that most people never discover. Something that could transform your entire life in a matter of moments if you had the courage to actually do it. And that power is the simple, radical act of walking away. Walking away from the job that's slowly killing your spirit. Walking away from the relationship that stopped nourishing you years ago. Walking away from the city that suffocates you. Walking away from the expectations that were never yours to begin with. Walking away from the version of yourself you've been performing for people who will never truly see. Walking away from commitments that felt binding but were actually optional all along. And we don't walk away, most of us, not because we can't, but because we've convinced ourselves that we're trapped, that we have no choice, that walking away would be irresponsible or selfish or catastrophic. But what if the real catastrophe is not walking away? What if staying in situations that diminish you, that drain your life force, that keep you small and safe and slowly dying inside? What if that's the actual tragedy? What if the power to transform your entire existence has always been available to you, waiting in the simple decision to turn around and walk away from everything that no longer serves your soul? If you've been feeling the pull to walk away from something but you're terrified to actually do it, please give this video a thumbs up and share what you're struggling with in the comments below. And if you want to understand the deeper wisdom of letting go and walking away, subscribe to this channel. Now, before we go any further, I need to address the fear that immediately arises when anyone talks about walking away. The fear that this is irresponsible, that this is abandoning your duty, that this is being selfish or weak or unable to handle difficult. And yes, there's a kind of walking away that is escapism, that's running from every challenge, that's refusing to do the hard work of growth and relationship and commitment. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the profound wisdom of recognizing when something has become toxic to your soul, when continuing to stay is actually the act of self-betrayal, when the price of remaining is higher than the cost of leaving. There's a difference between walking away from difficulty and walking away from destruction. There's a difference between abandoning responsibility and reclaiming responsibility for your own life. There's a difference between giving up and finally, courageously choosing yourself. The first truth about the power of walking away is that most of what you think binds you is actually a story you've been telling yourself. And stories can be changed in an instant. You believe you're trapped in your job because you need the money, because you have responsibility, because leaving would be too risky. But is that actually true? Or is it a story that keeps you imprisoned in a situation that's destroying you day by day? You believe you're trapped in your relationship because you've invested so much time, because you're afraid of being alone, because what if you never find anyone else? But is that actually true? Or is it a story that keeps you clinging to something that stopped nourishing you years ago? You believe you're trapped in your city, your lifestyle, your way of being, because this is just how things are. This is what responsible adults do. This is the life you chose. But is that actually true? Or is it a story that keeps you from admitting that you chose wrong, that you can choose again, that you have far more freedom than you've allowed yourself to recognize? Think about prisoners who've been released after decades of incarceration. Some of them struggle profoundly with freedom, with having to make choices, with the absence of structure and constraint. Some even commit crime to return to prison because they've become so adapted to captivity that freedom feels terrifying and overwhelming. And while most of us aren't literally imprisoned, we are psychologically imprisoned by stories we tell ourselves about what's possible, about what we're allowed to do, about what would happen if we walked away. We've become so adapted to our cages that we've forgotten their cage. We've convinced ourselves they're necessary structures. We've rationalized our captivity as responsibility or realism or maturity. But the cage is made of thoughts, of beliefs, of story. And the moment you recognize it as a cage rather than as reality, the moment you question the stories that have been keeping you trapped, you discover something extraordinary. The door has been unlocked the entire time. You could have walked away at any moment. You just didn't know it was possible. I remember remember someone telling me about the moment they realized they could leave their marriage. They'd been unhappy for years, but they'd convinced themselves it was impossible to leave. They had children, shared finances, extended family expectation, a life built together. The story they told themselves was, "I'm trapped, I have no choice, this is just how my life has to be." But one day, they were sitting in their car, outside their house, dreading going inside, and they had this sudden, crystallizing thought: what if I just drove away? What if I just kept driving and never came back? And in that moment, they realized they could. Nothing was actually stopping. The door was unlocked. The choice was there. They didn't drive away that day, but everything changed because they finally understood that staying was a choice, not a prison sentence. And once you understand you're choosing to stay, you can also choose to leave. The power was always there, hidden beneath the story of powerlessness. The second truth about walking away is that what you're really afraid of is not what will happen if you leave, but who you'll have to become if you stay. Deep down, beneath all the practical concerns and rational justification, what terrifies you about walking away is not the unknown you're walking toward, but the known you're trying to escape. You're afraid that if you stay, you'll become that person who gave up on their dream, who sacrificed their soul for security, who live a small, safe, suffocating life because they were too afraid to risk anything. You're afraid that if you don't walk away now, you'll lose the courage to ever walk away, that you'll adapt and compromise and rationalize until you can't even remember who you were before you became this person living this life that was never meant for you. You're afraid that staying will kill something essential in you, some spark of aliveness, some capacity for joy and authenticity and genuine engagement with existence. And that fear is not irrational. It's wisdom. It's your soul screaming at you that this situation, this relationship, this life you're living is toxic to your essential being. Think about people you know who stayed too long in situations that were wrong for them. Maybe it was someone who stayed in a soul-crushing job for 30 years and retired as a bitter, diminished version of what they could have been. Maybe it was someone who stayed in a dead marriage until they'd completely forgotten what passion or connection or genuine love felt like. Maybe it was someone who lived in a city they hated, or pursued a career that meant nothing to them, or maintained relationships that drained them, all because they were too afraid to walk away, too committed to the sunk cost fallacy, too imprisoned by their own stories about what they had to do. And when you look at these people, when you see what staying too long did to their spirit, to their aliveness, to their essential self, you recognize the real danger. The danger is not walking away. The danger is staying until you've betrayed yourself so thoroughly, so completely, that you can no longer recognize the person you've become. This is what you're actually afraid of when you consider walking away. Not the practical consequences, not the unknown future, but the alternative. The future where you stayed, where you kept compromising, where you slowly died inside while appearing to live, where you became the person who gave up on themselves. And that fear is health. That fear is trying to save. That fear is the last desperate voice of your authentic self begging you to choose life over safety, truth over comfort, soul over security. The third truth about walking away is that the moment you walk away from what's wrong for you, you create space for what's right for you to finally arrive. This is not magical thinking or wishful manifestation. This is basic energetic reality. When you're stuck in a situation that doesn't serve you, all your energy is going into maintaining that situation, coping with it, surviving. You're so busy managing what is that you have no attention or energy available for what could be. You're so occupied with the wrong thing that the right thing can't reach you, can't enter your life, can't manifest, because there's literally no space. But the moment you walk away, the moment you release the wrong thing, you create an opening. You free up energy and attention and space in your life. You signal to the universe, or to reality, or to whatever you want to call it, that you're ready for something different, that you're available for what's actually meant for you. Think of it like this. Imagine you're holding a heavy rock in both hands. Your arms are exhausted, your muscles aching. But you keep holding it because you've convinced yourself you have, because you've invested so much energy in holding it already, because you're afraid of what will happen if you drop it. And while you're holding that rock, someone is trying to hand you a gift, something valuable, something meant specifically for you. But you can't receive it because your hands are full. You can't even see it clearly because you're so focused on the burden you're carrying. The gift is there, waiting, but you're unavailable for it because you haven't put down the rock. This is what happens when you stay in wrong situation. You're so busy holding on to what doesn't serve you that you're unavailable for what does. I knew someone who stayed in a job they hated for years because it was secure, because it paid well enough, because leaving felt too risky. And during all those years, opportunities would occasionally appear. Possibilities for work that would have been far more aligned with their gifts and passion. But they couldn't seriously consider these opportunities because they were too committed to the security of the wrong job, too invested in maintaining what they had, too afraid to walk away. Then the company restructured and they were laid off, forced to walk away whether they wanted to or not. And within 3 months, an opportunity appeared that was so perfectly aligned with who they actually were that it seemed almost orchestrated. Better pay, more meaningful work, people who valued what they brought, and they realized that this opportunity had probably been trying to reach them for years, but they'd been unavailable for it because their hands were full, holding on to something that was never meant for them. Walking away, even though it was forced, created the space for what was actually right to finally arrive. The fourth truth about walking away is that you teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to tolerate. And sometimes walking away is the only way to communicate that you will not accept less than you deserve. When you stay in situations where you're not valued, where you're not respected, where you're diminished or used or taken for granted, you're sending a message. The message is, this is acceptable. I will tolerate this. My worth is not high enough to require better treatment. And people, whether consciously or unconsciously, receive this message and adjust their behavior accordingly. Why would they treat you better when you've shown them that treating you poorly has no consequences? Why would they value you more when you've demonstrated that you don't value yourself enough to walk away? This is not about blaming you for others' bad behavior. Their behavior is their responsibility. But your response to their behavior, your willingness to stay or courage to leave, that's yours. Think about relationships where one person is consistently disrespectful, dismissive, or even abusive, and the other person keeps staying, keeps trying to make it work, keeps hoping things will change. What message does staying send? It says, you can treat me this way and I'll remain. My presence is not contingent on your respect or kindness or basic decency. I will be here regardless of how you treat me. And so, the behavior continues, often gets worse because there are no consequences for it. But walking away sends an entirely different message. It says, I value myself enough to refuse this. I respect myself enough to leave. I know my worth and I will not accept treatment that contradicts it. And this message is powerful not just for the other person, but for yourself. Every time you walk away from what demeans you, you reinforce your own worth. You strengthen your self-respect. You prove to yourself that you matter enough to protect. I remember hearing about someone whose family consistently dismissed their feelings, talked over them in conversations, made decisions without consulting them, treated them as though their opinions and needs were irrelevant. And they tried for years to address this, to explain how it made them feel, to request different treatment. But nothing changed because the family had learned that this behavior was acceptable, that there were no real consequences. Then this person started walking away, not with drama or anger, just quietly leaving family gathering when they felt dismissed, declining invitations when they anticipated being treated as irrelevant, creating distance when the pattern persisted. And gradually, some family members began to notice. Some began to realize that continued relationship required changed behavior. Some began to actually listen and adjust. Not all of them. Some people never changed. But the important thing wasn't whether they changed. The important thing was that this person had finally communicated through action what words could never convey. I will not participate in my own diminishment. I value myself enough to walk away. The fifth truth about walking away is that staying in wrong situations is not loyalty or strength. It's a slow form of suicide, a gradual killing of your spirit while your body continues moving through the motion. You tell yourself you're being strong by enduring, you're being responsible by staying, you're being mature by not giving up. But strength is not endurance of the unendurable. Strength is having the courage to admit when something isn't working and walk away. Responsibility is not sacrificing yourself on the altar of others' expectations or your own past commitment. Responsibility is taking responsibility for your own well-being and life quality. Maturity is not staying in every situation you enter, regardless of how toxic it becomes. Maturity is recognizing when something has run its course and having the wisdom to release it. Think about what happens to people who stay too long. They become shadows of themselves, going through motion, performing role, but there's nothing alive behind the eye. The light goes out gradually, imperceptibly, day by day, compromise by compromise, betrayal by betrayal, until one day you look at them and realize they're not really there anymore. They've vacated their own life while their body continues occupying space. They're the walking dead, living corpses who gave up on their soul years ago but haven't had the courage to either revive or walk away. And if you're honest, really honest with yourself, you know whether you're becoming one of these people. You know whether you're slowly dying inside while pretending everything is fine. You know whether you're sacrificing your aliveness for comfort or security or the avoidance of difficult conversation and uncertain future. I spoke with someone once who described their moment of recognition. They were at a party, surrounded by people, laughing at appropriate time, saying appropriate thing, playing the role they'd been playing for years, and suddenly they had this out-of-body experience where they could see themselves from outside, see this person performing, this hollow shell where a human being used to live, and they felt this overwhelming horror and grief because they realized they'd killed themselves. Not literally, not physically, but essentially. They'd stayed so long in a life that wasn't theirs, in relationship that didn't nourish them, in a career that meant nothing, in a way of being that violated everything authentic in them, that there was nothing left. They were dead inside, and nobody had noted, including themselves, until that moment. And that recognition became the catalyst for walking away, for choosing resurrection over continued death, for finally, desperately, choosing life even though it meant leaving behind everything they'd built on the foundation of self-betrayal. The sixth truth about walking away is that you already know whether you need to walk away. And the fact that you're still here means you're waiting for permission that will never come. Deep down, beneath all the rationalizations and practical concern and fears and stories, you know whether this job is killing your spirit. You know whether this relationship has become toxic. You know whether this city is suffocating you. You know whether this way of living is authentic to who you actually are, or a performance for people who will never truly see you. You know, but you're waiting for someone to give you permission to leave. Waiting for circumstances to become so obviously intolerable that walking away becomes the only option. Waiting for external validation that it's okay to choose yourself. Waiting for a sign from the universe that you're allowed to go. But that permission will never come from outside. The circumstances will never be perfect for leaving. There will always be reasons to stay. Always practical concern. Always people who need you or will be disappointed by your leaving. Always risks in the unknown you're walking toward. If you're waiting for the perfect moment to walk away, you'll wait forever, because the perfect moment doesn't exist. The only moment that exists is this one, right now, where you have a choice. Stay or go. Continue dying slowly or risk living. Keep betraying yourself or finally honor your soul, knowing the permission you're waiting for has to come from within. You have to give yourself permission to lead, to choose yourself, to prioritize your soul's need over everyone else's expectation, to walk away even when it disappoints people, even when it looks irresponsible to those who don't understand, even when you can't fully explain it rationally. You have to trust your knowing, that deep inner voice that's been telling you for months or years that this isn't right, that you need to go, that staying is killing something essential in you. That voice is not confusion or weakness or fear. That voice is your soul's wisdom, and it's been trying to save you, trying to guide you toward life, trying to give you the courage to walk away. So here's what I want you to understand with absolute clarity. Walking away is not giving up. Walking away is refusing to give up on yourself. Walking away is not being weak. Walking away is having the strength to admit when something isn't working and the courage to choose different. Walking away is not being selfish. Walking away is recognizing that you have one life, one precious existence, and spending it in situations that diminish you is the real selfishness. The betrayal, not just of yourself, but of everyone who might benefit from you being fully alive rather than slowly dying. And yes, walking away is terrifying. Yes, there are risks. Yes, you'll disappoint people. Yes, you'll face uncertainty. Yes, you might fail at whatever you're walking toward, but you're already failing by staying. You're already dying by remaining. You're already living in a kind of hell disguised as responsibility or maturity or loyalty. And the only way out is through the fear, through the uncertainty, through the door that's been unlocked this entire time, through the simple, radical, courageous act of turning around and walking away from everything that's been keeping you small and safe and slowly suffocating. So if you're reading this and you absolutely know deep in your soul that you need to walk away from something, then walk away today. Now, not when conditions are perfect, not when you've saved enough money, not when you've figured everything out, not when everyone approves. Now, because every day you stay is another day of self-betrayal, another day of your soul crying out unheard, another day of becoming more and more removed from the person you could be if you had the courage to choose yourself. Walk away, not with anger or drama or burning bridges, but with clarity and conviction and deep respect for your own knowing. Walk away and discover that the power you were looking for, the freedom you were seeking, the life you were meant to live, they've all been waiting for you on the other side of your courage to leave behind everything that was never truly yours to begin with. That is the power of walking away. Not the power to escape, but the power to finally, fully, courageously come home to yourself.